journalist, he calls himself a journalist, reporter, is now in cahoots with a supposedly Republican lieutenant governor. I mean, we are really bringing people together, right?
Well, and we're asking for public records, but she had no business and no legal right to give out my private contact information on this to him. And that's what she's doing. And he says, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell anybody you gave this to me. Thanks for the tip. And this is my favorite line of all. And it's in the center column about a third of the way from the top. How the hell did she know what she's looking for? Meaning me. I think they admitted that they have access to this database. And then she says, I think she has it illegally. And she's trying to, meaning me, that I have this data illegally and I'm trying to justify having it. Well, what is their response to this? She says in there, and this is a record of it, I'm going to tell all the counties what they have to say to Miss Orton. Well, the problem with that is the counties own the data.
We really, really want to stress that tonight, and for everyone to understand, the county owns the data, and we own our own elections. Not the lieutenant governor, not the lieutenant governor's office. We do. The counties.
Yeah. So what happened next? Within a few days, I had men on my porch posing as pest control. I called a detective in to look. He came to check out, and he said, you were the pest, you got bugged. They talked to my neighbors and asked questions, and right here, people say, who was it? Was it the FBI? I don't know. I don't really know who it was, but at the same time, here's a copy of the communications from Grand County where they have copied the sheriff and the FBI on a response to me saying you can't have the data. We also have a letter right here from ES&S, the machine manufacturer. Let me let that sink in. Mom requests a public record. ES&S's corporate lawyer writes and says you can't have it. It's proprietary software. He says that giving it out would be a federal crime that would land them and me apparently in jail. I don't believe him, but we'll see. But what are they protecting? Why are we allowing, and this is for any of you that work in a county or even a city capacity, think about this. Why are we allowing a third-party vendor to have proprietary software that we're never allowed to see what's being loaded on our machines? Right? I mean, my husband today at lunch, he was talking to Sophie and I, and he's like, this is like a calculator. All the machine needs to do is add. It shouldn't even have a subtract button. He's like, that's not proprietary software. So why are they locking even the county out of seeing what is going on?
And it's really scary to find out through these public records and internal memos between our selected officials that any citizen that asks questions about elections, about the machines, about potential programming of the machines, and this happened in March 2020, a gentleman wrote an email and just said, I have a few concerns about potential pre-programming of our election machines. Well, guess what was gifted to this gentleman who just was asking questions? He got the FBI sent on him. He got the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, DPS sent on him. And frankly, Jen and I are quite worried about this man because we can't locate him.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he just said the programming that might have occurred this night, can I just talk to you? Wouldn't you think an elected official who really thinks they have gold standards and is even just being willing to halfway do their job would say, oh my gosh, if there's a vulnerability, yeah, we want to meet with you. Instead, they silence this man. So this is the director of our state elections sicking these three agencies on this gentleman by saying, hey, I think there's something you need to know about the potential programming. We have the same thing with Lieutenant Governor Henderson, and now our second in command for elections in the state, has admitted to sending the FBI of people who are just canvassing. And our favorite, and by the way, this was just 2 days after the men were on my porch, maybe it's coincidental, maybe not, Governor Spencer Cox says election conspiracy theorists are playing a very dangerous game.
And Jen and I believe him when he says that.
Yeah. So we just want to show you really quick, the graph to the right of this, I don't know how to, we can just probably skip this one. Okay, sorry. The graph to the right is what is from one of the counties in Utah. It shows the exact pattern that is matched across every state in the United States. How can that happen at a county level? You know, you gotta kind of ask yourself these questions.
This is one of our favorites. If you can read on there, at the very same moment in time, 3:29 a.m., thousands of absentee ballots, thousands of votes were switched from in-person to absentee. Okay, at the very exact moment in time. Okay, look at, I mean,
who's working at 3:29 a.m. anyway?
And that is meticulous. I mean, you're really nailing that timestamp. And when you add up what happened in Salt Lake County, 425,000 votes switched from in-person to absentee. Now, the reason this is very important is we know that this method is a very, very good method to cheat. It's very useful.
It's a suspected method of illicit voting.
It's a blank check.
So when we look at public records data, this is their own data, by the way, we realize that what they are reporting on their official stats does not match any of the public records we are able to get of their own stats across multiple counties. And do you know that 42% of all voter registration records statewide, 42% are inaccessible to the public, including 18% of people they're claiming are domestic abuse survivors and policemen who are afraid. 18% of all registered voters across the state. The problem is, when you use their own numbers for that, you realize, if you look at these top charts, that Davis County would have to have 100% of those people in that withheld category show up to vote to make their numbers make sense. Salt Lake County, 103, I can't see that number down there. Whatever. And no, Salt Lake County is 117%, and Utah County is like 103.
And the scary part about this is because Utah is so horrible about turning over public records, and keyword is public records, they belong to us. This is just data that we're able to run from the data that our own counties put out to the public. So you can imagine what's really there if this is what we're seeing in just the public.
Utah leads out on being the only red state who does universal mail-in balloting. Also the only gubernatorial election where their governor got more votes than Trump by 53,000. Look at this chart, you guys. This one blew me away when I found this. In the shift from 2012 to 2016, by the way, which is when the time period where Cox was installed as lieutenant governor, miraculously, Utah is the only state in the nation that shifted solid blue. Top to bottom, solid blue, they claim. If you look at Seth Peschel's heat map of Utah, he says, looking at the data, he found 5 counties that were troublesome.
And look at that one on the bottom.
He said these are the counties based upon the data that are highly likely to have fraud going on. Washington County.
The most conservative in the state.
Exactly. So we asked for the data ourselves. And that's part of what got the men on the porch and everything else that followed thereafter. There's a lot of drama with that one. But we were able to take our case to Weber County. They have a local appeals board. They looked at the data for a week. One of the gentlemen on it was a lawyer, and they looked and said, the law says you can have everything you're asking for. Yet the lieutenant governor threatened every single county and their attorneys with lawsuits if they gave us the data. And also a lawsuit if they didn't deny us fast enough. In other words, they wanted to be able to destroy the data at the 22-month window. Rumor is some of them already have. But our lawsuit has actually preserved that.
So this is the main reason we had this event tonight. Jen and I are taking on the people that refuse to give our elections transparency. And we're not backing down.
So again, the county owns the data. The county owns it. So we took the counties to court, 3 of them. who actually told us, we think you should have it, but the lieutenant governor is threatening us, so we're kind of scared, so just have a judge tell us that we can give it to you, and we're going to be smiling. This is a quote. We will smile as much as you are when you leave with that data.
And this data is the tabulator tapes, the CDR report, the backup project database, and the ballot images.
So what happened? Our lieutenant governor intervened. She hijacked the lawsuit, said, I'm in charge of elections in this state. You can't take the counties to court.
And one of the problems with this is that the past has shown that these data election returns have been given to the citizens of Utah before. Weirdly, 2020, all of a sudden,
Suddenly they're not public anymore when you ask Governor Cox if he won his election. As a matter of fact, Juab County gave Sophie some of the tabulator tapes. They got halfway through, because we did for the primary and the presidential. Halfway through, they gave her the primary, and all of a sudden they got the presidential. They wrote back and said, sorry, we were told by the lieutenant governor we can't give these to you anymore. The county owns the data. We need the counties to step up. We have filed a notice of appeal. None of the information for all 29 states in the state of Utah is allowed to be destroyed. Yep.
just so you know, Jen and I, our lawsuit and our requests are the template for the entire nation. Mike Lindell took what we did and spread it like wildfire across the country. And yes, it's exciting.
So we have a question for Deidre Henderson and Governor Cox, and who's Lieutenant Governor. Every communication we have found says that election security is their big concern. We want to know, why isn't election integrity? She also asked us to turn down the rhetorical heat on election fraud claims. Why don't you just show us what you're doing? Prove us wrong. The burden of proof is on them, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our next topic. There. Yes, so we really want to bring it home tonight that if your sheriff tells you that they have to have a documented report of fraud in your elections, that is not true. That is false. They are lying to you. The Constitution and their position allows them to do. They could right now, if they wanted to, walk into the county clerk's office and confiscate the machines.
And other states are doing this.
And so we ask you, please go to your sheriff in Washington County and ask him if he would be willing to step up and even just look.
Just investigate.
Investigate it.
Every one of us should be doing that tomorrow.
Please do.
Absolutely. And you know what? If they say you need to file a complaint, file one. We have the data. There's more than enough reasonable cause with their own information on there's something wrong here. Things are not adding up.
But first teach them their role and say, no, we don't. We don't have to file a complaint. You're not doing your job.
So the problem is when you have a governor who runs his own election and he's a lawyer, you kind of have the ability to insulate yourself really well. So we have no term limits for our governor. We cannot recall them. We cannot sue. We have one of the most robust government immunity acts in the entire nation. In other words, we can't prosecute them for hardly anything. And the Salt Lake County sheriffs have been stripped of their power to investigate crimes at the Capitol and the rest of the county. Maybe this is why Cox spent $600,000 of taxpayer money protecting his private home with security and built a virtual fortress of the governor's mansion. What is he hiding?
Because when you're selected and not elected, you know there's a reckoning that will eventually come.
This information was hidden from the public until after the law was approved. And even the Tribune admitted it. Brian Schott even admitted that. So there you go. So we have governor pronoun because that's what happens when your machines run your elections and you have selected, not elected. You can't ever get them out until we do something. You've heard it before. We are the people that we are waiting for. And